Hello and welcome to the Pro Football Network Miami Dolphins Podcast. I am your host, Matt Infante, joined as always by Adam H. Beasley. And Adam, on Sunday, the Dolphins defeated the Panthers. They're 5-1 for the first time since 2002, which was Ricky Williams' first year with the Dolphins. 21 years ago, the number one song in the Billboard chart was A Moment Like This by Kelly Clarkson, where it famously says, some people wait a lifetime for a moment like this. Dolphin fans have waited a lifetime to be 5-1, apparently. 21 years. Where were you 21 years ago, Adam?
I hate to admit this, but I was already well into my career. That's how old I am. I know there are members of the Miami Dolphins locker room that weren't even alive then. But yeah, I was on my third job already, if you can believe that, working for the Baltimore Ravens. You wonder why Ray Lewis is behind me? I'm in that picture behind me. I was with the Ravens from 2002 to 2006. And so it was my first year there, and I was enjoying the big controversy among the quarterbacks there. They had Chris Redmond versus Jeff Blake.
That sounds like fun.
It was not.
Certainly a step up now, huh? Covering that team to covering Tua Tagovailoa, Tyreek Hill, and the most explosive offense that I've seen in my lifetime, probably. And the offensive stats are kind of ridiculous, right? And I know, but we don't want to harp too much on just what they've done with the Panthers, but the season as a whole, they average 100 yards per game more than second place right now, which coincidentally is the Eagles, who they face on Sunday. They are first in points per game by by a touchdown over second place.
Not on the season, per game.
Per game. 7 points per game better than second place. Yards per drive. They're gaining 42.5 yards per drive. That's 5 yards more than second place. And everybody else after that's bunched together within, a yard or so as you go on down. 50% of their drives end in points. Second place is 47%, so not that big of a difference. 42% end in touchdowns. Okay, that is 10% more than second place. The league average is 19%. 19% of drives end on touchdowns. For the Dolphins, it's 42%. So what we're seeing is historic, but they can get better because there's areas where they're weak, and that is goal to go. 77% of their goal to go end in touchdowns. That's 15th. They're average there. And the turnovers, obviously. I think it's like 13% of their drives end in a turnover, which is the 11th worst figure in the NFL. Cut down on turnovers, score in the goal to go, and all of a sudden, they could actually get better.
Well, yeah, and they could get some help from their defense too. What are they? -4, I believe, in turnover margin on the season, which is bonkers. That they're like third in point differential, second or third in point differential, whatever it is, and they're -4 in turnovers. I would like to see, and every week I say this out loud, and I'm going to come prepared one week. Great show prep we did here, Matthew. I would love to see where they rank in terms of average starting position on drives, because they haven't had a ton of short fields. They're scoring 37 some odd points a game, having to go 60, 70, 80, 90 yards every single time they get the football. So if they had a couple of short fields, that scoring average would go even up higher, which is hard to fathom.
Well, I have that for you. I'm glad you asked. I had the screen open actually here. Their average starting is the 0-29, which is tied for 10th with the Eagles. There's a lot of ties between the Dolphins and Eagles, you will find as you go through numbers, which is interesting heading into this matchup this week. But yeah, their 0-29 is their average start position. The 49ers are first. Their 0-34 is the best.
So actually, that's not as bad as I thought it would be. But they haven't had those quick turnover, take the ball over at the 25, the +25, and go 2 plays later and in the end zone. The Van Ginkel fumble recovery, I think, put them inside the 20. And that's really the only one I remember. I'm sure you're going to think of more examples, but there aren't many.
No, there aren't many turnovers to think of. And the ones I can are more deep in their own territory as opposed to in the opposition. So,
and they have arguably the worst special teams, although they played well this past week, arguably the worst special teams in football. So it's not like they're getting big swings in the kick game either.
Yeah. A lot of metrics you look at for special teams rankings, the Dolphins are in that 28 to 32, depending on what site you're looking at. They did win the special teams game against the Panthers. stopping that fake punt where, they're trailing by a touchdown at the time. That was kind of a momentum, swing there. I think the Dolphins scored 3 plays later to tie it at 14. But certainly, yeah, the special teams is another area they can improve on. So this team has looked great and can get better, which is scary for the rest of the NFL. Exciting for Dolphin fans, obviously.
Yeah, no, I agree. Obviously, concerns you would have if you have any, which is fair. Healthy offensive line. It sounds like Connor Williams is not going to practice Wednesday. Full disclosure, we're taping this 11 o'clock on Tuesday morning, so we don't know for certain. But it doesn't sound like a sure thing that they'll have Connor back for the Eagles game, which we'll get into isn't great considering that matchup. Haven't had Teron Armstead for it feels like the entire season. I mean, how many snaps has that guy had? Maybe 60, 70 on the entire year. Kendall Lamb's been great. So the offensive line will get healthier and should get better, which is crazy because they're already playing out of their minds. And they're down 2 running backs now. Although they're going to get Jeff Wilson back, I think it's a net negative. You go from Devon Achane and Chris Brooks to Jeff Wilson, you're losing that transaction. So there are, we can have quibbles, but as long as they've got Tua Tagovailoa, as long as they've got Mike McDaniel, as long as they've got Tyreek Hill and Raheem Mostert, this offense is going to function at a high level.
Yeah, and a big reason for that is obviously Tua. He's the only quarterback this year in the NFL with a passer rating of at least 90 in every game, which speaks to the consistency level as well. It's not the peaks and valleys that you might get from certain players. Josh Allen comes to mind immediately when you think peaks and valleys. But Tua's season, it's funny. We always find a way, or not we, but others, to overlook what the quarterback is actually doing. And I feel like it doesn't happen to a lot of quarterbacks, but Tua is one of them. So you may try to marginalize what he's done because of the talent around him, but he's first in pass yards, first in yards per attempt, first in yards per completion, first in passing touchdowns, first in passer rating, first in adjusted yards per attempt, first in passing success rate, first in expected points added plus completion percentage over expectation composite. And he's first in the MVP odds at most sports books now, as he should be at this stage. Adam, what do you think to the people who, and there's some that will say he's a product of Mike McDaniel and Tyreek Hill, and he's not the MVP right now after 6 weeks?
Those people are flat out wrong. And to be honest, showing their bias. And I was there 14 months ago because I didn't think Tua would be able to do what he's doing now. I was on the record about it. I've been on the record that I was wrong. He has been the best player in the National Football League this year, and he has been the best player on a Miami Dolphins offense that has a receiver that might break the single season receiving records. So, this is not, we should not take this moment as Beasley saying Tyreek Hill is not a very important part of this offense. He is. He's dynamic. He has the vast majority of their big explosive plays. But, Matthew, those explosive plays are a small part of what this team does, right? It's not like last year, I think it was fair to say this was a boom or bust offense, right? Either you hit a home run or you strike out. And by the way, the Philadelphia Phillies are hitting a lot of home runs in the playoffs. Let's just drop that in there.
Phillies fan over here.
Let's just drop that in there right now. They're getting Schwarber even hitting home runs. It's going to be a quick series for the Arizona Diamondbacks. That's neither here nor there, okay? That is me digressing. Tua has been incredible. And I don't think you by saying that, it means you're denigrating what Tyreek Hill has done, what Mike McDaniel has done, what that offensive line has done, what Raheem Mostert has done. What's crazy is Raheem Mostert is only 7 rushing touchdowns shy of Ricky Williams' single season record, and there are 11 games left, okay? He already has 9 rushing touchdowns, and there are 11 games left. So all of these things play into a role. But you can't have arguably the best offense of all time, and they're going to make a run at it if they continue to play at this level. Certainly, they'd beaten up on some bad defenses, and we can talk about that. But you can't have this kind of historic clip and it just be because, oh man, they got Tyreek and Mike McDaniel, and that's covering up for a bad quarterback. No, it's not even covering up for an incredible quarterback. It's covering up for the best quarterback in the National Football League right now from a statistical standpoint. There's really no doubt that he is the most valuable player on this team. And I'm going to give you some stats. And again, EPA per play isn't the end all be all. But this is from SIS. Credit our boy Dalton Miller for pulling this together for me, because I was having a heated debate on the Dolphins text chat, who still, I'm not going to name names, but still some think that Justin Herbert would be doing the same thing, if not more, in this Dolphins offense, and Herbert's the better player than Tua. I don't want to have that tired debate, because the excuses that are made for Herbert were never made for Tua the first 2 years, and Tua has now shown that he's an incredible talent. Okay, here are total EPA per plays, and explain real quick what EPA means, Matt, because you are our numbers guy.
Yeah, so it's expected points added. The EPA, it's something that was devised, I believe it was in the 80s, in a book explaining that the value of each individual play and what that attributes to the result of a drive, which is points. So it's a mathematical formula, but the interesting thing is there's stickiness with it. But when you use it as a forward, looking stat to talk about what future trends you will see based on what EPA says about past performance. So there's stickiness there that makes it relevant, I think, more so than some other stats.
Yeah, and I would say anything over 0.10 is a really good offense. EPA per play. Anything over 0.10 is a really good offense. Anything over 0.20 is an historic offense. I mean, you're talking about pretty clearly the best offense in the league at that point. I think the Niners are like 0.18 at some point at this point, like somewhere in that neighborhood. And they're a phenomenal offense. Let's not kid ourselves. That offense is great. So anything over 0.20 is, you're talking about best offense in the league, one of the best offenses in recent memory. Okay. Here is, and this isn't a small sample size, by the way. Tyreek Hill has missed a lot of snaps this year. They've been in blowouts, so he hasn't played late in some games. He's been in the, locker room getting IVs. He sounds like he went through 6 bags in week 6 and still cramped up pretty gnarly. So it's not a small sample size by any stretch of the imagination. I think there's been 140 some odd snaps the Dolphins have had this year without Tyreek Hill on the field. That's more than 2 games, 2.5 full games, more than a third of the season. That's not insignificant. Okay. When Tyreek Hill is on the field, they have an EPA per play of 0.13, which again, very good. Top 5 in the National Football League year in, year out. In the plays that he is not on the field, 0.28. 0.28, Matthew. That would make them, without Tyreek Hill on the field, maybe the best offense of all time. One of the best offenses that you've ever seen when he's not on the field. And it's largely because it's an enormous jump in rushing efficiency. But they are more efficient passing the ball when he's off the field as well. Their EPA per play when he's on the field is 0.2. When he's off the field, it's 0.36. 0.36, again, passing EPA is always going to be higher than rushing because passing is more efficient of a play than rushing is. But 0.36 is mind-boggling. They're 50% more efficient. 50% more efficient. More than that when Tyreek is off the field. And the rushing EPA is insane. With him off the field, it's 0.22. With him on the field, it's negative 0.01. I think what that does is speaks to a couple of things. One, the Devon A-Chain influence in this offense was real. And, I think it will hurt them to a degree not having him. We've talked about last week that I don't think it's a death knell by any stretch of the imagination. They just dropped 42 without him. But I do also think that maybe their most efficient formation is 2 running backs, 1 tight end. When they run that 2 wide receivers, 2 running backs, one tight end, I think particularly with the running backs that they have, and getting A-Chain back will be huge, but I think they can do some of this stuff with Ahmed. They're going to get Jeff Wilson back this week. Maybe they can do some of it with him as well. But you're also talking about Al Gingold as being one of those running backs at times too. So having that flexibility, the run game is absolutely fantastic when they have a fullback on the field. And so that's all a long way of saying that Tyreek, incredible player, probably going to get 2,000 yards and break the NFL record for receiving yards in the season. But he's not the stir that mixes the drink that is the Miami Dolphins offense. That stir, in my opinion, is Mike McDaniel and Tua Tagovailoa, and you can quibble with who's 1 and 1A. Certainly, Tua didn't have this level of success without Mike, so he deserves, I would say, the majority of the credit, but not the vast majority by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, just one quick kind of aside. Interesting that the formation, being the most effective, and you kind of see it on film as well. And you wonder how restricted they were last year by having Mike Gesicki, right? And that sounds crazy, but not having that tight end who can catch. Durham Smythe he can be a factor in the pass game, but it is a definite factor in the run game, and that makes a difference to what McDaniel wants to do. And I wonder if Gesicki was still here, this offense, is it as explosive? Is it as efficient as it has been? And we'll never know, but I would lean towards no based on what we saw last year.
Well, I mean, would they have the courage not to play him? I mean, that's really what it would come down to. Would they be fine with Durham Smythe being the role he's playing now, and Gesicki being a wide receiver? Because can he do some of the same things that maybe Cedric Wilson's done? Sure. I mean, they're not the same player by any stretch of the imagination, but you could squint and kind of see maybe he does some of the same stuff. He'd be an oversized slot receiver, I think, in this team, which you take speed off the field and do that too. Like, yeah, he could probably help you in the red zone a little bit and maybe make that goal to go, ratio go up a tad. But is that worth making wholesale changes to your offense? No, absolutely not. So I do think that having that two running back, one tight end formation, particularly when they have a guy in Smythe who's shown an ability to catch the ball more than I thought he did. How do you defend that? Like, are you going to go heavy because like you have two running backs and a tight end on? Your personnel is going to probably be heavy, right? You're going to probably have at least 7 guys in the box, maybe an eighth. You're not going to have your nickel out there because you're going to want to have the extra linebacker to stop the run. But these running backs run like wide receivers. Yeah. And so and they catch like wide receivers too. Like, how do you defend that? You want to go one-on-one with a linebacker covering Raheem Mostert or A-Chain when he was healthy, or, even Alec Ingold run those wheel routes as a weapon. So, or do you go light and keep your fifth defensive back out there and then they just run the ball down your throat? It really is a dangerous formation for them. And I think it's one you're only going to see more of, particularly when the running backs get healthy.
Yeah. Unlocking this run game has been something that, has really taken this offense to the next level. I mean, we saw glimpses of the pass offense last year, but this is a whole nother level, and that's been a big part of it. And McDaniel's getting back to what he has done historically, right? He was a run game coordinator. And I think people forget that point of it as well. With all the attention paid to Tua and his relationship, he was a run game guy from a Shanahan tree who's, historically focused on the run game. So it was about time, we should have all saw that they wanted to do this. Nobody could have saw it would have been this effective this year.
Yeah, and he uses all 53 and a third yards sideline to sideline. That's what's wild is like that that touchdown pass, that first touchdown I think they had to Mostert. Go back and watch what Durham Smythe did on that play, which was wild because I think did he line up as an inline tight end to start? He was certainly on the left side of the formation.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. I don't know if he had his hand in the dirt or not, but he was left side of the formation. He comes in one of their big sweeping motions behind Tua at the snap of the ball and then runs out as a flying lead backer on a swing pass to Mostert. That is using every single inch of the field when you do that. And I think it was just a snapshot of how McDaniel conceptualizes how this offense is supposed to function.
Yeah. And all the numbers you just gave, we don't want to make it seem like it's a slight at Tyreek because it's obviously not. He's probably the best receiver in the NFL right now. When you look at the numbers, it's absurd what he's doing on the fact that he has the 814 yards he has on only 59 targets, like that, only 59 targets this year, and he has those numbers. Everyone talks about the record and the Calvin Johnson record and 2,000 yards and all that. Right now, Tyreek's on a 17-game pace of 2,306 yards. But now everyone's going to say it's 17 games. So I wonder how much Tyreek would want to break it in 16 games just to do away with the asterisk, right? And he's on pace for that. He's on pace for 2,100 yards through 16 games, which is insane. Calvin Johnson's record is 1906, I believe. 1964. There it is. 1964. Tua needs 1,150 more yards to reach that record. That's 115 yards per game. If he wants to do it in 16 games, if he wants to do it in 17 games, we need 105 yards per game. All, certainly achievable. And I just want to point out one thing. Calvin Johnson, when he broke the record, he had 205 targets that year. So he averaged about 9.5 yards per target. Tyreek Hill averages 13.8 yards per target right now. I mean, he will need about 150 if he keeps this pace up, 150 targets to break the Calvin Johnson record, which is a ridiculous stat.
Here's a question for you. Legit question. Why is he far better, not just a little bit better, but far better now with Mike McDaniel and Tua Tagovailoa than he was with Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, who have been for 5-6 years the gold standard of a coach quarterback combination?
I don't have that answer. I mean, there's no Travis Kelce taking targets away, but even still, there's not a large. Last year, there wasn't a large target discrepancy between Tyreek's historic target number and Tyreek's number. With Travis Kelce in Kansas City, not a big difference. So
sorry for everyone who was watching the YouTube stream. I had to go let my dog in because she was tearing down the door. I apologize for that.
That's okay. The dog wants to listen.
She does. She's a huge Justin Herbert fan. She wants to be on the record why the Dolphins would be even better if Justin Herbert was their quarterback.
I think you should let the dog back out. But yeah, so I don't know the answer to that question. But it's certainly worth considering. And then, all of those that want to, again, take shots at Tua's MVP candidacy because of the team around him. Well, Mahomes had Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, is Kelce one of the 3 best tight ends ever, probably? Yeah. So no one did that with Mahomes, and they shouldn't have. And they shouldn't do it with Tua either, is the point.
No quarterback wins the MVP without being on a very, very, very good team. A very, very, very good team. You're just not going to be able to have the wins that you need to get the award and to accumulate the statistical body of work. Like you could be making all the best throws in the world. And if guys aren't open, making the catches and people are blocking and all that, if you don't have that, you're not going to win the MVP simply because your stats aren't going to look nearly as good as they should. And so, yeah, it's obviously Tua has benefited from getting rid of a coach that basically kept him in jail, right? Emotionally at the very least. Yeah. To Mike McDaniel, who is the most affirmational coach I've ever encountered. Yes, big benefit. And Tua's career was saved by that coaching change, probably. And, maybe he goes somewhere else and he has, second act like Drew Brees did, perhaps. But we don't know. And I do think that there were on a lot of offenses, he would not be as good as Justin Herbert. I think that's fair. I think he would not be nearly as good as Justin Herbert on that Chargers offense. And I think that's more of an indictment of the scheme and the personnel than it is on Tua. But yes, Justin has the physical ability to make plays that Tua does not. But you know what? Tua has the timing, the physical ability, and the intelligence to make plays that Justin Herbert couldn't conceive of. Like how many times is Herbert late on throws? All the time. Yes, he can do the dynamic things that make you just drop your jaw, but that's not what makes a good quarterback. What makes a good quarterback is dependability, down in, down out, knowing where to go with the football, getting it out on schedule, and then when a shot's there, taking it and taking advantage of it. It's not like Tua's a bad deep passer. I'm watching ESPN right now, and he just hit Tua for his that touchdown. It was a perfect throw, when he did the backflip and the camera and all that. You still need to have someone who delivers that throw on time, on schedule, and Tua has done that as well as anybody in the National Football League this year.
Yeah, and to that point, and not to harp on this too much, but just last night on Monday Night Football with the Chargers and the Cowboys, there were 2 throws, one notably to Keenan Allen that might change the game and swing it in favor of the Chargers if he connects on a wide open throw that it needed a little touch, and that's dating back to Oregon. That was always Herbert's, kind of. The thing that made you wonder about him. I don't want to say it's bad, but there would be touch throws that he just couldn't put on film in college. It's translated to the pros. And last night, for all the country to watch, it was on. It was clear as day how open he had. 4-yard radius around him that he could have dropped that ball in, and he just missed Keenan Allen.
Yeah.
And those are the kinds of throws that, and maybe Tua misses them when he has no confidence and he's playing under Brian Flores. But I mean, that's the kind of throw we see regularly now from Tua.
Oh, that's a routine throw for Tua.
Yeah.
Like, that's not even a challenging throw for him at this point. The challenging throw is when the wide receiver hasn't even made his break yet on the third level, and there's two defenders right into his eyesight after he turns around with his back to the line of scrimmage, by the way, with massive arrogance after play action. And he lets the ball go to a spot where he just believes his receiver is going to be. He believes the receiver is going to open up that window and occupy the space that's needed. And he's right. He's absolutely right. Now, you look at the picks that Tua has made, and they've just been largely just dumb decisions, right? It's not like the play is broken down or physically he hasn't been able to make the throw or any of these things. No, he just didn't have the right read and threw to a space that had two dudes in it. And that was the pick six they had 2 weeks ago. It's hard to keep my pick sixes straight. The last one was Mike White. Two pick sixes ago was Tua, yes, that he threw to a space that had two giants in the same place. And yeah, that those are the interceptions he's made. It's not because his arm strength, like the noodle arm wrap on him. Oh, he can't make the throws. They've thrown outside the numbers pretty good this year, right? It's not like this has totally been an offense that's been between the numbers like last year largely was. And the great thing about Tua is, like, every single year, he takes a narrative and just shreds it, just completely shreds it, right? And I think the one he's in the process of overcoming is durability. And he has not appeared, again, I don't want to jinx them, so knock on wood, he has not appeared on a single injury report in the first 6 weeks of the season. He told me last week, this is as good as he could possibly feel at this stage. Credit goes a long way, certainly to the offensive line, to McDaniel for scheming up an offense where the ball comes out of his hand quick. But, like, what do we say about Tua next if he starts 17 games this year? I mean, what's the next thing? What's the next narrative he's going to destroy? And again, you're talking to the beast feeder, right? Like, I'm one who absolutely leaned into all these questions because they seemed to me legitimate at the time. He's just going about his business and saying, whatever you think of me, whatever you think my limitations are, you're wrong. I'm going to prove it.
Yeah, absolutely. And your point about the offensive line should not be overlooked, right? The Dolphins are allowing sacks on only 3% of the team's dropbacks, which is second in the NFL. They're only being pressured on 11.9% of dropbacks, which is first in the NFL, according to Pro Football Reference. And I guess this is a good segue now to the Eagle game, because the Eagles are pressuring quarterbacks on 25.7% of dropbacks, which is the fifth most, tied with the Dolphins, by the way. Again, another one. The Eagles and Dolphins are very similar in a lot of categories. The Eagles aren't getting home as much. They're sacking quarterbacks just 8.5% of dropbacks, which is middle of the pack, 14th. But that's going to be one of the big aspects of this game is, can the Dolphins protect Tua against Hassan Reddick and Josh Sweat is the other their top two pass rushers. They may be without the rookie, Jalen Carter, right? I believe he missed the Jet game. He might miss this game. But still, right, the offensive line protecting Tua is going to be one of the two or three big stories for this game on Sunday Night Football.
Yeah, they got to be able to run the football, right? They can't get and do just a pure drop back game against the Eagles, because the Eagles are going to do whatever they can to run the football, and the Dolphins have not been great against the run, although they've been better since the opener. So, if this is, I don't know what the magic number is for rushing yards or attempts that they need to win, but if this is a game where it's a 45-15 ratio pass to run, I don't love the Dolphins' chances. Now, sounds like Darius Slay might have some injury issues as well. We'll see if he plays, but I do think that the Dolphins are going to have a challenge that the likes of which they haven't seen since the Buffalo game, and we saw that went very poorly for them. But I do think that they learned from that, and getting away from the run way too early was an issue. Like, if this really is an insanely efficient run offense, an incredibly efficient run offense. If they don't have that balance, it's not great for them from from a competitive standpoint.
Yeah, and this is a chance, their second chance to prove themselves. The Bills game we talked about was a litmus test. Did not go well. And that's kind of been what I've noticed this week in the kind of the narrative around the league is the Dolphins' strength of victory. It's 0.172, which is second lowest in the NFL among teams with at least 2 wins. The 5 teams the Dolphins have beat this year have combined for 5 total wins themselves. So, that is now the latest and greatest narrative the Dolphins need to overcome and improve. And this is a chance, right, on the nationally televised game, which is the game of the week, right? It's going to be on Sunday Night Football, and it deserves to be because you have 2 5-1 teams. But there's concerns, right? We kind of doted all over the offense, but the defense has some concerns. I guess we can start in the secondary because I think that's where a lot of it stems from. Xavier Howard left the game on Sunday. Do you have anything you can enlighten us on with Xavier Howard, his possible availability, and what it might mean to the secondary if they don't have him?
Yeah, I gladly answer that question in a second. I just wanted to touch on a point that you made in the lead up to that question. Yes, their strength of victory is laughable. I mean, it's really, really bad. But they're also beating the piss out of teams, man. It's not like if they were 5-1 against those 5 teams and their scoring margin was, like the Eagles, by the way. The Eagles are plus 31 and their strength of schedule has not been that, stellar either. I mean, they do not have an impressive body of work when it comes to teams they've beaten and teams they've lost to. If it was that, I would be a little bit more like, this it could be a little bit fraudulent 5-1. I mean, they're absolutely massacring teams. I mean, they can spot the Panthers 14 points and not even blink, like win by 21, like win going away. So yeah, you look at what you kind of have to do is you kind of have to interpret the numbers, and the numbers tell me, as we just talked about with EPA, that what they're doing is so historically good that while it wouldn't be as good against some of these top opponents, it doesn't mean that they're just fluking their ways into these wins. And they're very clearly one of the 5 best teams in the National Football League, not even close. Now, I'm not as concerned about, like, the offense scores points. Their low of the season's 20. And I think that was kind of a misleading 20 because they had tons of opportunities to score in other ways. But the way the game went, going for a 4th down, going for 2 instead of the extra point, like there are a lot of ways that they cost themselves points. That if their only goal was to score 28, they could have scored 28 points. They could have done it.
Yeah, and I think there's something to the mindset of the defense not being able to get a stop at all, and the offense putting more pressure on themselves, and a lot of that game script got out of control in a hurry. That 20 is misleading.
Yep. So, as for the broader question about the secondary, don't have, again, as of 11:30 on Tuesday, don't have the latest on Xavier Howard. The latest that we know of is he was undergoing more testing on Monday for a groin injury. Matt, I'm not going to lie to you. When I heard that was the issue he's having, I kind of shuddered a bit because 2022 was Xavier Howard's worst season. It was his worst season because he had groin injuries. I believe he had 1 to each side. I think he had 2 at some point. Yeah. So not great, and certainly not great because if you want to look at it, what the Achilles heel of this team is, it's their inability to cover. They do a fine job getting after the quarterback. They do a much better job of stopping the run. Their offense is nearly flawless. Defense, their coverage stinks, right? It's really bad. And it tells you it's bad because they keep rotating through potential corners to fix the problem, and nothing really has. And I think even in the second half last week, there were some throws there Bryce Young could have made that he missed. He just didn't see. So Jalen Hurts is not going to give you that pass. He's a much better quarterback at this stage in his career than his fellow Crimson Tide. That to me is the worry. If they lose this game, it's not because the Eagles solve the Dolphins offense. The Dolphins offense is going to be fine. It might not put up 42, but it's going to be fine. They're going to lose this game if they do because A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith run free down the field against the likes of Eli Apple, Kader Kohu, and Perry Nickerson. Maybe that's who is the
Perry
guy.
Nickerson played 29% of the snaps. He was that dime back last week.
Yep. And so maybe Nick Needham comes back. Again, I'm sorry if you're listening to this and it's dated already, but we don't know if Nick's going to be able to be back. He is that in the third week now of his window to return um, from PUP. Although I don't know if the PUP rules are the same as IR. He might have a little bit more time.
I think
But
he has more time.
yeah.
Yes.
Regardless, he's now a full year removed from that Achilles repair, and that's the timeline, right? A year is what Achilles usually take, unless you're Aaron Rodgers and ayahuasca has got you powered to have an incredible recovery from a torn Achilles. Maybe we see him, I mean, possibly, but not having Xavier Howard, not having Jalen Ramsey is going to be an enormous challenge if that's the case for a pass rush that needs to get after the quarterback repeatedly. And we don't know if Lane Johnson's going to play, but if he does, I mean, that's a really good offensive line. A lot going on here, man. There really is. And It's great, though. It's great to have games like this where you really have to dig into the subplots. We didn't do any of this the last couple of weeks. None of it.
There wasn't a need to. There wasn't a need to. That's why Dolphin fans need to enjoy this, because you get to be the center of the NFL universe for a week. And if you win, I mean, that's a whole nother level then. If they win, we get to enjoy it again when you play the Chiefs in Germany. But
here's a question. If they win, are they the best team in the National Football League?
No, probably not.
Still a 49ers.
More about, I don't think the Eagles are, if this was the 49ers, different conversation. Mm-hmm. And I put their loss to the Browns, that's aside. That was a fluke. They were without Debo and Christian McCaffrey. I think you'd have to beat the Niners to be.
I mean, they did lose to a third string quarterback. It's not like it's not like the Browns had Deshaun out there. I mean, it was,
well, that might actually benefited them, but that's for another
good point
for another conversation.
Yeah,
I think they'll have a chance if they win this. If they also beat the Chiefs in Germany, I think you have a case. I don't think just being the Eagles alone will be able to convince everyone that the Dolphins are the best team in the NFL.
Oh, I'm just asking you. Does it convince you?
No, I would still, I would want to see a win against them. They don't play the Niners. You won't get that opportunity until the Super Bowl. But beat the Chiefs, beat the Eagles and Chiefs, and then I will tell you they're the best team, because that would be an impressive little, group of wins there to have on your resume.
It would be nice to have one of these at home. Seriously, it would be nice.
It does seem like all these
the Bills on the road,
Eagles on the road in that way.
Yeah, Chiefs 5,000 miles away in Germany. What's, aside from the Bills, who they obviously get twice, what's their biggest test at home?
It'll be the Cowboys, Christmas Eve, I think.
Okay,
that's probably it.
Which is they're probably the third or fourth best team in the NFC. So that's certainly a test. But yeah, you're waiting 3.5 months to get that first real home game that I think you need to be able to like honestly, if the Dolphins are incredible at Hard Rock Stadium. Like, they've won 15 of their last 17, nearly unbeatable there. If they beat the Cowboys, convincingly even, but if they beat the Cowboys on Christmas Eve, and they get home field advantage, they've got to be the favorites to go to the Super Bowl. They have to, just simply because of how good they are in that stadium. So it would be nice to be able to see, hey, Eagles, come to our place, Chiefs, come to our place, and then we'll get a kind of a sense that, yeah, that game in Buffalo got away from them for about 9 different ways. I don't think it's the same outcome if that game was in Miami. I think it's a different story.
Yeah, and we'll see that the week after the Cowboy game, or maybe 2 weeks after.
2 weeks after. I think
it's the last week.
Yeah, because they have week 17, I believe, is in Baltimore. So they finished. I believe they finished with Cowboys, Ravens, Bills. Which, honestly, once you get past the Chiefs, those are their only 3 hard games left. I mean, I guess we could talk about the Jets. Do you want to take time to talk about the Jets briefly on the Dolphins podcast?
Yeah, you know what? I will pass. We will put that off till Thanksgiving week. Because who knows? Maybe Aaron Rodgers is he's back already somehow in 3 months from an Achilles. Because every time I see an update, he's progressing more and more, and I have nothing else to add. That whole storyline is bizarre.
It's because he doesn't have
any. He can do it. More power to him. But
foreign toxins in his body. He has the strength to heal on his own. It's pretty amazing.
It's
And those that
amazing.
can't see on our podcast, I am smiling because it was sarcasm.
Yeah. Yeah. So now before we get to a pick, and I know you hate doing these kinds of picks on a Tuesday, right? But I also feel like we've kind of, discussed a lot of the storylines here. But the whole nationally televised Sunday Night Football game of the week thing. McDaniel was asked about it I think it was on Sunday after the Panther game, because we're already looking ahead, right? And he mentioned how, you do things the right way and they give you a reason for people to pay attention to you, right? So I was trying to think, when was the last time the Dolphins played in a game like this, where both teams enter a nationally televised game at the top of their conference standings? And initially 2013 Monday night game against the Saints, both teams are 3-0 in the Superdome, and the Saints did, win like 38-17. But that was early in the season. So then I wanted to go back further. So I went to Thanksgiving 2003, which was the game against the Cowboys with Jay Fiedler, Chris Chambers. They were 7-4. The Cowboys were 8-3 going into that game. That's still not quite the same. So I had to go back to 2002. It was a Monday night game, 4-1 Dolphins in Mile High against the 4-1 Broncos. And the Dolphins won that game. That's probably the last time that, into October or later, that they had a game where it was two of the top teams in the NFL in a nationally televised game. And notice, all of them were on the road, to your point, which is just weird. But yeah, hopefully this one turns out better than the Saints game, because that was one that I immediately thought of. It was early in the season at 3-0, and the Saints just steamrolled them. That was Tannehill's second year.
But here's the thing: those games, and even the 2003 game, no one thought the Dolphins are going to go to the Super Bowl. They were, even the heyday of that defense with Fiedler. No one thought that was a Super Bowl team, right?
It was the Ricky Williams' second year. His second year wasn't as impressive as the first. The first year, the 1800 year, who knows? But yeah, I don't know. At the time, again, disclosure, in 2003, I was 19. Yeah, 19. So I probably thought they were going to the Super Bowl, because that's what I did every year from the time I was like 12. But I don't know what the national narrative around them was, but everyone loved the Cowboys that year. And the Dolphins went in there on Thanksgiving, and they just trounced them. But what's going to happen here, Adam? That's what I want to know. What's going to happen on Sunday in Philadelphia in front of a national audience when the Dolphins have a chance to really, kind of make a name for themselves to those that are doubting them?
I'll say this. If the Dolphins lose, it'll be because they can't cover, right? That'll be it. So are you telling me, do I get Xavier Howard or not? That's the question. And I can't make that.
You get Xavier Howard, but he's a little bit, he's not 100%.
Right. And do I get Nick Needham?
Does it make a difference for you?
I'll take him over Eli Apple.
Okay, well, that's fair. Okay, you get Nick Needham.
I think the Dolphins win. I think they're the better team. And that's the thing, is that I yes, the Dolphins have their deficiencies. The Eagles have deficiencies. They've got concerns, and they're not the same team that blew through the NFC last year. And honestly, if Brock Purdy's elbow exploded, maybe they didn't get to the Super Bowl. Look, God bless him, Jalen Hurts, very, very good player. Tua will throw circles around him. And I know Jalen Hurts, he's a dual threat and all that, and he does things that Tua cannot. Tua is a far better passer, pocket passer than Jalen Hurts is. There's so many Jalens, it's hard for me to keep track. I almost said Jalen Ramsey, Jalen Waddle,
a lot of Jalens.
Yeah, hard to keep them all on track this game. No, I think the Dolphins are the better team. I think their offense is so much better than the Eagles' offense. So much better. Not even close to, way better. That if they can figure out a way to get enough stops, they're going to win this football game.
Yeah, the big concern to me, the secondary is a concern, but also the whole scrambling quarterback thing, because we've seen time and time again that gives the Dolphins fits. Anytime they play, it's not just Josh Allen. There's been others as well, that because they can get that initial pressure on them, and then they can't get home. The quarterback breaks contain, and all hell breaks loose in the secondary. And that's happened a lot where the play starts and you're like, oh yeah, we got pressure on them. It's going to be a positive play for the defense, and then it's not. And maybe those scars are showing up here now because I think the Eagles will win. I think it will. This will not be a game like Buffalo. I don't think, unless there would be some unraveling with turnovers for that to get it away. But I think a 4 to 6 point victory by the Eagles is probably what if I was a betting man, that would probably be what I would do. But certainly this game is a close game into the fourth quarter is how I kind of see it playing out. Probably one or two stops short.
Yep. I think it's going to be their most entertaining game of the season, and that's saying something because they had the Chargers in week 1.
Absolutely. I mean, win or lose, I think America is going to enjoy watching the Dolphins offense and maybe their defense because they'll allow big plays. It could turn into a shootout very quickly. I don't know what the total is, but over has got to be the popular wager there from the public because I think this could turn into a shootout pretty easily, pretty quickly. We'll see.
I've got a friend whose name I'm not going to share because Dolphins fans would know this name, but I've got a friend who's a season ticket holder, and he's like, "Oh man, if I was given the choice between a grind out 19-16 Super Bowl or losing a divisional round but scoring 60, give me the 60." Certainly I would prefer to win a Super Bowl, all things being equal. But if you're telling me what product I want to pay for more, give me the up and down track meet. And I think that there's a lot of that going on. One more thing before we get out of here, Matt. I know we're running late. Did you notice how many people showed up to Hard Rock Stadium dressed as empty seats in week 6? It's a problem for that stadium. And I know the players always say how great the fans are. The fans that show up are fantastic. But if there's not a strong out of town draw, there are 5,000 to 10,000 empty seats every game. Those seats are sold. They were more likely than not sold to speculators who wanted to, turn a profit. And they had a real hard time finding Panthers fans to buy those seats. So I don't know. And the ratings haven't been great this year. This has made me think that there are no casual Dolphins fans and there are no bandwagon jumpers, that the core they have is fervent. And I deeply appreciative. And this is not a joke. Deeply appreciative of those that listen to this podcast, those that read our stories, you pay our salaries. But I do think there's a pretty hard cap to how many Dolphins fans are in South Florida. And all the excuses, oh, we're sitting in the sun. Nope. Oh, the team's boring. Nope. Oh, the team's bad. Nope. None of those things apply. And there were still a lot of empty seats against the Panthers. I'm sure when the Cowboys are in town, it's going to be packed. And I'm sure when the Bills are in town, the Jets are in town, it's going to be packed. See about the Patriots. I don't know if their fans are going to travel. But to me, if South Florida sports fans don't embrace this team with both hands and arms and bear hug this team, I don't know if football is ever going to be the same in this market, because you cannot ask the personalities they have. It's an incredibly likable team, incredibly likable. They have the most dynamic offense. They have the most dynamic quarterback. They have the most dynamic wide receiver. All of these things that you wanted to ask for, you're getting, Dolphins fans. You got to show some love back.
Yeah, I not being local to the area, I always wondered, why it was the way it was, kind of post Marino, as far as the stadium being filled and the ratings and all that. Nationally, I think, and I've said this for a while, I think they have a fervent, strong national, non-local following. And I don't know how it happened. I mean, I'm one of them. Don't know how it happened. Anytime I wear Dolphin stuff out in New Jersey or New York City, I'll get some negative stuff from Jet fans. Will just shout at me because that's what Jet fans do. But I will get a surprising amount of Dolphin fans coming up to me and just saying, yeah, Dolphins, and walking away and things like that. It happens. My wife laughs. Pretty much anytime I'm out in public now with my son and we're at, someplace doing something for the fall, a corn maze, someone comes up to me. And that's a Dolphin fan. And I see it a lot on social media as well. I think their following nationally is very strong. They have really committed diehard fans across the country. But locally, yeah, I mean, you can see the seats on TV. It's not a secret. And then when you see the ratings numbers come out for the local television ratings, they're always at the bottom. And yeah, like you said, if not now, when?
And part of that is, and this isn't a secret, there is a large percentage of the Miami market that's untouchable, that you cannot reach them, and a lot of it's the language divide. I mean, we're a city of immigrants, we really are, and so there are some that just won't like football and won't consume the media that we produce because they don't speak the language. I mean, it's not being jingoistic. It's just the truth. I mean, that Miami has some real challenges as a sports town for American sports that don't have international appeal. And even the NBA, it's an international sport in the way that the NFL is not. But you would still think you would still get people coming down from Broward County, Palm Beach County, even further north, that are generational Americans who grew up watching football. It's hard for me to get my head around why you cannot fill a stadium of 65,000 when you have the best product in the league. And that's got to change. It just has to.
Yeah. And it will be very interesting if the Dolphins do get a home playoff game this year, what the seats look like for that. And is it going to be a situation where it's, 70-30 with the opposing fans, or will Dolphin fans buy those tickets up? It'll be, hopefully we get a chance to see that. And then
we haven't since 2008.
Yeah. And it didn't end well.
No, it did not.
As anyone could have saw with Chad Pennington versus a Ravens defense. That was destined to fail. But okay, we are out of time. Enjoy the game on Sunday. Sunday, it'll be fun. If nothing else, it should be an entertaining game. Be sure to find all of our Dolphins content here at profootballnetwork.com/Miami-Dolphins. Subscribe to the podcast. Subscribe on YouTube if you are watching on YouTube, and if you're not, you should. And we will see you back here next week on the Pro Football Network Miami Dolphins podcast.